Good morning, Joelle. How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
Good, good. No complaints.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about 7 steps to help your parents through the aging process. And I believe you found an article about this that we're going to discuss today.
There was a great article actually in Kiplinger, and let's walk through it.
Sure.
Um, you know, it's interesting because we all see our parents as a certain way at a certain stage in our life, and watching them age definitely brings on new challenges, and it brings on different challenges in different respects, both financially,
Sure.
emotionally, psychologically,
Yes.
physically, all the leads. So this article really caught our attention, and we thought it might be a really good um, way to just kind of share. If I'm looking over here, it's because my screen is over there. We're going to look through this article together. So this is in Kiplinger, a very well-known publication, generally finance-based, but caring for your aging parents, a 7-step guide, and assessing their needs is makes sense. It's number one. But especially during visits, and if your family members are out of town, sometimes you see big differences just in small chunks of time, right?
A
Uh,
100%.
yeah, I mean, if you don't see your family for 2, 3 months, a lot can happen in 2, 3 months. Um, and I have a neighbor right next door to where I live here who really was fine. She was a hospice nurse, Joelle, and really sweet, sweet. I mean, you got to be a sweet, sweet, nice person to be a hospice nurse to begin with, right?
Sure.
And she retired. Her husband died about a year ago. And just the nicest lady. When we moved in, she brought over a chocolate cake she baked, which got developed
Oh,
very quickly. And she's from Boston, and her children I'm sorry, she's from New Jersey, and her children live in New Jersey. And she's probably in her late 70s, early 80s. New Year's Day, she was walking her dog and face planted in the street and wound up at the trauma unit. Um, and she now has in-home care, and I've seen just in 3 months like a major deterioration.
yeah,
And
Brian, what you're pointing out is what often happens with aging parents and aging people is that there's something that happens like a fall. It's more often than not a fall, and they may have been fine before the fall, and then after the fall there's just can be a huge decline.
it could be physical, could also be, mental abilities and
Sure.
dementia, Alzheimer's, and so forth. So,
Sure.
number one, you have to really kind of take a step back as a child and assess what their needs are. Where are
Yeah.
they at this point, and what is their need?
And there are some things that you can do that are pretty simple fixes. For example, in some homes, even that are on one level, there may be like a slight little step down into a room. And if you just provide things like the mat that gives you an incline, so there's not an actual step, they can walk, that can make the biggest difference. So small things also really matter. This is not, we're not just talking about assessing needs for people that need to go into a care facility, but just making their home environment as safe as possible and as easy for them to continue living in.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there are companies that actually senior-proof homes. I
Yeah,
hate to say that term, maybe that's the incorrect term, but I remember when our kids were born a long time ago, and we baby-proofed the house. We put locks on the cabinets, and we,
right,
put up gates and all these
of
other things.
course.
So, number two, consider your capacity. We all want to help, but what is our ability to help? Can we be a caregiver? Can we be a provider? Do we need outside assistance?
This is
Number,
that's a very important one as well, because as we discussed in the past, I moved to Florida to live with my parents. We actually purchased a home together so that I could make their lives easier. And that's definitely something you need to think about. Is that something you can do? I know people in our community where the parents live in one house and the children live in another house across the street or down the street so that the kid can be in close proximity. So you need to know what your boundaries are and what you can and what you cannot do.
100% part of the reason I moved to Florida. So totally get it. This one is tricky. Number three, uh, involve your parents.
Hmm.
I mean, we probably could talk for several hours on this one, number three. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, some parents will fight you, some will go along, some will be somewhere in the middle, go along with some things and not
Hmm.
go along with other things. You know, I remember my father, he should rest in peace. And my father was a smoker, and my father developed a lung issue and had to take oxygen. But it wasn't like portable, easy oxygen. He
Right,
had
because it was a long time ago.
well, he died in 2020, just to give you some time frame. He had this big tank like Jacques Cousteau, that he was like a scuba diver. He would carry it with him. He had spare tanks that were banged together in the trunk while he was
But
driving and smoking. And
scary.
well, very scary. I said, I'm not really worried about you killing yourself. I'm worried about everybody else you're going to take out when this car explodes. You know?
Uh,
And so it's interesting because, involve your parents. I actually took the keys from the car. I actually took the car. I took the keys and I took the car. And he came out one day and said, "Where's my car?" I go, "Well, I can't really tell you because I sold it yesterday. So I don't know exactly where it is, but you're not driving anymore."
that is
So
the hardest thing to do is to take a car away from a parent. I
it
mean,
was
they're
harsh.
already, yeah,
It
they're
was
already
harsh.
losing their independence and they know it and it's frustrating and nobody, look, we all look in the mirror and we see our 20 something selves. We don't see our 50, 60, 80-year-old selves. And we think, where did the time go? I still feel inside like a younger person.
100%.
But they do know that their facilities can be declining and nobody wants to admit to that, right?
Nobody wants to admit it, and it was his freedom, and I took it away, and I dealt with it. I dealt with the repercussions of it too, because he was plenty pissed off,
I'm sure.
but for a long time. And my feeling was that we've switched roles now.
Yes.
I mean, you are not. Both my parents really were um, didn't make good decisions. And you driving around with a tank at 4 o'clock in the morning, going to the grocery store, smoking is just not a good. Something bad is going to happen,
Right,
and
right,
and you're not a good driver on a good day. So 4 o'clock in the morning with deer running across the street, you're definitely not a good driver. And it
right.
and weather didn't matter. So if it was a blizzard of 5 feet, he's still driving at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I did something, that I had to do, and my logic for it, Joel, was my job now has switched.
Hmm.
I now have to be the harsh parent and do
Right,
what's in the child's best interest. Much like they did when I was growing up. I probably made tons of bad decisions, and
of course,
I had to suffer the repercussions of them. Believe
of
me.
course.
So,
Yeah,
it's hard, and I'm not judging in any respect what any person does, but that's how I dealt with it and came to the conclusion that if you're at the point of not making good decisions, well, you're not making good decisions. And
yeah.
I've got to step in and, deal with
Yeah,
it.
what's interesting about the involving your parents, of course, everybody wants to be included. Nobody wants somebody to make decisions for them. But I think often what happens, and I think this is just good advice in any relationship, is, you're trying to convince them that they need to do something or not do something or whatever it is. And it's often in a heated moment, like your parent has just almost fallen and you're saying you need to use a cane. And it's our inclination to talk about it right at that minute because that's where the problem is. But that's also the heightened period of time when they're frustrated and stressed and you're frustrated and stressed. And it's always better to wait until there is a more calm moment where maybe you're just having dinner or something like that and having a nice time to say, hey, mom, dad, the other day, you almost fell and that really scared me. And I wouldn't want you to get hurt. So I think we need to look at some ways that we can make it so that the chances of falling are less. Like we need to maybe have a cane or put up some rails or whatever it is. But it's oftentimes the minute that we decide to have that discussion that may cause the tension. So we have to think real carefully about when we bring things up and how we bring them up. And I think that would make a huge difference for people.
That's tremendous advice because it's totally the advice I didn't follow and felt all the repercussions of.
I think it's hard for any of us to follow it because something happens and you want to react right then and there.
Yeah,
And
it's just
that's
natural
human
knee-jerk,
nature.
yeah, knee-jerk reaction for sure.
Yeah.
Understand their finances is number four. And, a lot of parents are, you know, pretty cagey about it, keeping everything
Yes.
close to the vest. But the reality is it's a time to really get an overall picture of what's happening. And maybe one of the things, I didn't have that problem, by the way.
Oh,
My
you're
parents
lucky.
didn't, well, I don't know if it was lucky. They didn't have anything to worry about. So it was
Oh,
nothing
no,
to
no
deal with.
finances to worry about. I
Right.
misunderstood
Yeah.
what you
So,
meant.
I mean, it was like nothing there. So we're good.
Right, right,
Um, but you still need to deal with it. And sometimes, having an attorney or a trusted accountant that's in the family broach that subject is maybe better than you bringing it up, especially if it was multiple kids. I mean, mine was very simple. My parents had me very late in life, like in their mid 40s. I'm an only child, and they had no money.
right,
So I mean, it was pretty cut and dry, right?
right, exactly.
But it's not always the case, and so it's important that the finances are understood. And not only is it important that the finances are understood, it's important for another reason. And one day we'll have some estate attorneys and accountants as guests on our podcast. But I know that I had to put the property into a trust. It was I'm not sure if it was irrevocable or revocable, but
Right,
it
right.
was one of the two where I owned the property and we kept it away from Medicaid with a 5-year look back. That
Mm-hmm,
was their only asset.
mm-hmm.
Um,
As
and
often the homes are, usually
yeah,
their only asset.
yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, we sold the house and, um, but it was kept out of, and I made the decision, by the way, we'll save this for another episode. I had to, with my mother, make a very similar decision because she was not being safe or
Mm-hmm,
logical or sane. She didn't
mm-hmm.
have Alzheimer's. She was crystal clear. But, we'll save that for another day.
Sure. What's also really important in these finances and important to involve attorney in, and this is also for anybody over 18, you really should have a medical power of attorney. Because even though it will go to the next of kin, sometimes the next of kin is also not capable of making that decision or doesn't want to make decisions. And if you have siblings or other family members that are involved, it can become very contentious and difficult. So it is really important to have a medical power of attorney and as well other powers of attorney in place so that if you need to make decisions and the person is incapacitated, you can do that. Because as you know, once they're incapacitated, they can't sign for a power of attorney.
100%. Yep. So, number five, ensure their home safety. We talked briefly about
Mhm,
it. Um,
mhm.
Six, facilitate communication. I mean, that goes, I don't think that even needs discussion. Uh,
Right, exactly.
but yeah, and seven, explore care options. And, there's so many different options. There is adult daycare, there is in-home care at various levels of skilled nursing. There
Hmm.
are communities you can go to.
There's
Uh,
short-term care communities you can go to.
yeah, I mean, you could go to even a long-term community for a respite stay,
Right.
just for some short period of time. So there's lots and lots of options. And we're going to be going into and speaking to some of the people involved in all of these various levels on upcoming podcast episodes, but it's just kind of good to know Kiplinger's take here. It's maybe seems a little intuitive, but maybe not so much. Because when you have the issue, all sorts of things are flooding your mind, emotionally,
Correct.
financially,
Well, you're
psychologically.
in crisis when the issue happens, and
You're in
that's never a good
crisis.
time to be making decisions.
Right. And so I think the whole point of this is just getting a little bit ahead of it before it happens. And hopefully, God willing, it will never happen. But if it does happen, at least you're prepared for various scenarios and have resources. And you're being candidly very proactive instead of reactive. I
Right,
I was reactive in both cases, my mother and my father. I knew a little
right.
bit more with my mother because I'd just been through it with my father.
Hmm.
So, I knew a little bit, but I didn't know all that much. And anyway, so I hope everyone finds this useful. We'd love your comments. You can all feel free to share this. If
Yes,
you are part of the senior community and feel that your topic would be appropriate for our podcast, we're always trying to bring knowledge to our viewers and listeners. Uh,
yep.
so, any final thoughts, Joelle?
No, I just think that these are very, like you said, it seems pretty simplistic and something that you would think of logically, but these are not easy topics to discuss. And I think having some assistance in this article really is helpful because even in my situation, I feel like we've discussed a lot of these things, but there's still some things that we haven't done, and they're just hard topics to bring up and to go over.
And I'd invite anybody watching or listening to visit seniortransitionhelpers.com. Certainly welcome to call us at 561-788-7062. And until next time, I thank you all very much. Thank you, Joelle.
Thank you.